Now, just like getting in shape requires a lot more than just going to the gym and lifting heavy things, building financial independence also requires a lot more than just making money. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Gabriel. I've been living in Tokyo, Japan for over 6 years, where I currently run and manage my own business. And so here are 5 techniques that will take you to financial independence that I have learned from my experience as an entrepreneur in Japan. And you will also have a few pro tips at the end. Now, our first technique is called kakebo, and that's actually an art form. It's truly the art of mindful spending. Now, as you can imagine, achieving financial independence takes a huge amount of discipline and a very clear strategy. And our first technique, kakebo, is actually a very powerful yet simple budgeting system that has been implemented here in Japan for over a century. And unlike other budgeting tools, kakebo actually focuses on reflection. You'd be surprised how many times you're actually spending your money without even considering it. And even myself, many times I'm actually spending money and buying things without asking, do I really need this? Or could I actually hold on for a few months? Or could I actually live without this altogether? But of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with you spending your money on the things that you like. After all, why are you working so hard to get your money? But there's a time and a place for that, and I'll get to that in a second, I promise. Kakebo is basically the Japanese take on a budgeting journal, and in it you're going to track every single one of your expenses by asking yourself a series of very simple questions. How much income? How much is saved? How much is spent? And how to improve? Now, this last question is absolutely essential, because one thing is understanding how your money is moving, but if you're not able to actually make it move more efficiently, then you'll never build any significant savings. And I'm not even talking about building wealth. I'm not talking about financial independence just yet. I'm just talking about being in control of your finances. You think you are, but chances are you're not. And if you actually consciously and efficiently review your expenses, you'll develop a mindset of intentional saving and spending. And this is actually essential when it comes to us reaching our big objective. And now, as a pro tip for our first technique, I would actually suggest that you take a few minutes each week to highlight any trouble areas or any areas where you could actually cut back the following week. Even if it's a very small change, these do actually compound over time. So you'll see that in a few weeks, they will make a very big difference. And now for a second technique, we have the Japanese envelope system, or futo ake. Now, Japan has been a cash-based society for a very long time, and even though this has finally started to change, there are a few traces that remain, and this is one of them. Traditionally, people would actually store their cash at home in a series of envelopes for different categories like transportation, groceries, entertainment, and so on. And when the money in one particular envelope would run out, you were done with your spending for the month in that particular category. Now, of course, you don't have to go out and get a bunch of envelopes. In fact, I don't use envelopes, and I rarely use cash, if at all. And if you trust yourself enough, then you can actually go ahead and try to keep track of your money yourself. But otherwise, there are many budgeting apps that can help you with this, and even in many banks you can also set limits and alerts that can help you with your overspending in certain category. In any case, this is a very important technique, not only to help you keep track of your finances, but also to help you understand and help you learn how to make the most out of your budget. Because without financial discipline, there is no financial independence. And now for my pro tip for this second technique, I would actually suggest starting with 3 basic categories: groceries, savings, and leisure. And then you can add additional categories as you become more comfortable with this budgeting system. And now for a third technique, we have the 80-20 rule. Save first, spend later. Now, I'm sure some of you have heard of the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule in business, which basically states that 80% of your results come from 20% of the work. But when it comes to budgeting, at least here in Japan, the 80-20 rule suggests that the first thing you should do when money comes in is actually set aside 20% of that money into your savings, and then take the 80% and use it for all your living expenses. Now, many times what happens to many of us is that we start by spending all our money and we say to ourselves, well, I'll just save whatever's left at the end of the month. Or maybe even I'll spend less next month and actually save twice as much. But I don't have to tell you how that actually works out at the end. And even as a side note, I would suggest that as you start making more money, I would actually increase the percentage of money that you put into your savings. And so the 80-20 rule could actually turn into the 70-30 rule, or the 60-40 rule, and so on. The point is that by actually prioritizing your saving first, you ensure that your financial independence goals remain on track. And the beauty of this method is actually its simplicity. There's no tracking, there's no apps that you need. It's just mindful saving. And the point of it, I would say one of the advantages of it, is that you can even make it be not your choice. You actually start by pretending that this money, this 20%, doesn't even exist. And that's actually my pro tip for our third technique, is that you can actually automate those transfers from your bank account into your savings account the moment the money comes in. And so the first thing that happens when you get your salary is that 20% of it automatically disappears and goes into your savings account, and it's as if they were never there in the first place. And like I said before, of course, as your income also increases, instead of increasing the amount of money that you spend, you should most definitely increase the amount of money that you save. And now for our fourth technique, we'll talk about minimalism, the zen of living with less, at least here in Japan. Now I'm sure, of course, many of you have heard of minimalism and Zen philosophy and its connections to Japanese culture. More than just a form of design and so on, it's truly a way of life. It's a philosophy in itself. And it emphasizes above all things understanding and appreciating how to live with less. Now by simplifying your lifestyle and cutting any unnecessary material belongings, you not only reduce your clutter, but you also relieve your mental space in a way. Now we've all heard of things like living within your means or living below your means. And so this philosophy actually aligns very closely with financial independence because it emphasizes on actually getting rid of all the clutter and the distractions and only spending on what truly matters. Now, like I said earlier, the beauty of these systems is that they don't actually have to be forever. You don't have to now spend the rest of your life living like a Zen monk or like an ascetic and not spend one single dollar. They can come and go in periods depending on the needs in your life. Like me, for example, sometimes throughout the year, maybe a handful of months or a couple of months, I'll limit all of my spending and actually lock in to work. And then once that period actually settles down, then you can actually splurge on a little family holiday or go to high-end restaurants in the city. It all depends on the specific period in your life and what it demands from you. Now, after all, you have to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, but enjoy them after you've actually done the labor, not any time that you have a couple of dollars in your pocket. And so as my pro tip for this technique is that you can do what I do. You could take it in periods throughout the year. And I would also suggest trying a no-buy challenge for a month, for example, where you actually limit your spending to only the most essential things for your household and for your business, and any Amazon purchases or things like that are completely off the table. And at the end of the month, once you've actually finished this challenge, if you will, you'll have the satisfaction of not only having achieved it, but also the delayed gratification once you actually decide to go and buy the things you want. And now for our fifth category, we have the 3-month review system. Now here in Japan, that's actually surprisingly something that's quite common, and I'm not talking necessarily only about big companies. You don't have to be the head of Toyota or of Panasonic. There are actually people in common and private households that also base their finances on this system. Now every 3 months you all just get together and basically review your expenses, your income, and just the general status of your finances at home. This, of course, is very useful when it comes to you trying to keep track of your financial goals and make sure that everything is still going in the right direction. And it makes it easier for everyone in the family to actually adapt to any strategy changes or any financial changes that might occur at any point. And I think personally it's also a very good way to see the overarching growth of your finances throughout the year. Sometimes it's actually very good to take a little step back and get more of a big picture kind of image of your finances. And the 3-month review system is actually a very good way to do that. And so my pro tip for this technique is to actually set a calendar reminder, set a calendar event to get the family together, or at least with your partner, and discuss your finances. Not only to tackle any possible challenges that you might have in your financial life, but also to celebrate the small wins. Maybe you've recently had your first 10k a month, or you've broken a personal record and spent the least amount of money in a month. All these things also have to be celebrated and acknowledged. And speaking of which, if you live in Japan and you'd actually like to know how to make additional income, then make sure you watch this video right here to know what the best side hustles for foreigners are. So don't miss it, and I'll see you over there.